Hey everyone, happy Friday. So I have something for you. I do this once in a while where I'll bring on a clip, and I'm going to leave the video link at the end of all of these for you to go watch in full. But I bring on certain things that might help your awareness and your level of consciousness expand when you hear things from a different point of view. Now, some of you may have heard what I'm about to show you, some of you may not have. But when we hear things over and over again, depending on what state we're in at the moment, things will land differently in our consciousness. And I've been pulled to share this information for over a week now, and I am determined to get this out to you today. So I'm going to show you a clip, and I'll discuss in more detail after it, because I believe the way I can articulate it after, it's gonna set so many of you free, and it will give you so much more understanding of what's really going on.
I was called in and asked to solve this problem, this timeline contraction problem. And I eventually did my due diligence and did all the investigating, and basically only had one piece of information, and that was reinforcement. The computer's right. The timelines will contract down to some inevitable thing. There is an inevitable event. It's been forecast, it's been predicted, it's been fed to us in a slop trough of what they want us to believe will happen. They don't actually have control over what happens. They only have control over the reaction, and it seems that no matter what they try to do to cause their desired reaction, it's going to have an opposite effect. Much, much easier for me to explain today what that process is as opposed to back then. If I had to give it a name, I would say it's the awakening process. It's an evolution of consciousness that cannot, will not, and no matter what decisions or possibilities are injected into the equation, eventually it all resolves down to us all learning the truth and becoming aware of learning the truth and becoming aware of this massive dam of lies that has been built that keep us from knowing massive volume of information that we should otherwise possess. Essentially what happened with Looking Glass, not only did they not want people to use it anymore because they knew it was just going to burp out the same thing, but at the same time they didn't want anybody else to know what it was saying, I'm sure. Because that information was a monumental concern when I was in the military about how to prevent this inevitability. Now, at first I thought it was end of the world. Now I see end of the world as end of their world. The biggest cherry on top of all this conversation would be a synopsis to say that if I could convince everybody out there that for all intents and purposes, what we believe to be true eventually becomes true. Believe to be true eventually becomes true. If somebody convinces us that a major disaster is going to happen in the very near future, a major disaster happens in the very near future. A major disaster happens in the very near future. If we don't buy into that fear and accept that there's really nothing that we know is going to happen, and accept of whatever happens, that makes the convergence of the timelines happen as naturally as possible. Any attempts to try to go away from this one inevitable conclusion, I again see as a new beginning, an end of this reality, the beginning of something that we can't even possibly understand based on the level of our beliefs currently. But when all that information comes flooding out, there's going to be no denying what's true and what's a lie or what's illusion. Basically what we're experiencing right now is two master chess players sitting at the board. And one of them looks down at the board and sees that he's in checkmate in 7 moves. And he looks across at his opponent and he knows that his opponent sees it too. So there's no getting out of it. So at this point, the loser can only prolong the game. Both players know the game is over. It's only a matter of time before he does this, and then you're forced to do this, and then he's forced to do this, and eventually checkmate. We, as a race, if we could understand that the game is over, that based on the rules of the game, the bad guys have already lost, the good guys have already won. Yes, there's moves left on the table, but those moves are being forced by the player that is going to win. The only way that checkmate can't happen is if the player that's winning makes a mistake. But from all of the information that I've gathered, all of the information that's been given, all of the information that's been vetted to me, it seems pretty obvious that the good guy player on the side of the chessboard knows exactly what has to be done to win the game. And so at this point, any mistake would be all but impossible.
So as you noticed from the beginning, you may have to go back and watch that a couple times. In the beginning, this man from the military is saying that there is an inevitable event. An inevitable event that keeps showing up as the only outcome in the Looking Glass project. And when you understand, because he doesn't share this here, that the military or the high up elites that know about this outcome, that even asked him, because of his expertise, to continually plug into this computer every single code, every single mathematical equation to see if there is any other possible outcome for them. Because here's the thing. People wonder if we're alone, if we're getting help. Well, this is proof. Infinite intelligence is resetting. I shared this in my videos. The Great Reset is resetting our matrix, our natural divine blueprint back to its original divineness. This is what the Great Awakening is helping to accomplish. So as the Looking Glass is portraying out and outputting an inevitable event, and they've tried every equation, they've done it over and over again, and the same event comes out no matter how much they try to interfere with it by jumping timelines, by creating wormholes. This is what CERN Montauk project was for. They're always to tear fabrics in time, to try to manipulate timelines to change this outcome. This is an ascension cycle. I've talked about this. Some of you have probably learned more about it. It only happens every 26,500 years. This is a major pivotal point in our history, in our ancient history that most of us can't even remember. So this is what these off-planet races have been through many cycles. They are very aware of what's going to happen during this one. And they're trying their damnedest to manipulate the timelines artificially to make it output their agenda. It doesn't happen. So with what Bill Wood is saying here, being an ex-military, clearly he had security clearance with information that most humans will never ever know. However, he said that the inevitable outcome that he perceived now looking back was the evolution of consciousness. It was on a mass scale where globally humans began to wake up. That's why we call it the Great Awakening. It's where our consciousness rises in frequency, where we're able to see and understand things at a level we weren't able to ever do before. Truth becomes real for us. We hear about what's been hidden from us for thousands of years. And this is a massive awakening for human beings, to the point where he even shares that our beliefs, the limited beliefs that we were all given, are going to want to deny what we're hearing because they're so deeply in contrast with what we've ever been told. Now, I want to bring in, so that people understand how this all comes together, is when I speak about the ascension cycle, I share how higher frequencies are coming in from our galactic core, coming through our sun and hitting Earth, which means it's raising Earth's level of consciousness, and it's also raising our level of consciousness. And this is why we're seeing so much desperation in trying to block these frequencies from coming in. And also, when they do come in, they're trying to make it so that our bodies aren't able to transmute the frequencies through the radiation on the planet, what they're putting in our foods, what they did with the injections and all of that. So they're trying to counteract what is making it in here so that our bodies can't transmute that energy the way they're supposed to. Now, when higher frequencies come into Earth, we've been held under what I always teach about a 3D frequency fence. We're in a very, very low state of mind, state of consciousness. I've shared so many times examples of that. Desperation, fear is huge, competition, jealousy, insecurity, hurting other people, and even hurting your own self through self-talk. There's no self-love for yourself. We're taught to put ourselves down. And so these keep us in a very, very low frequency. Our bodies are made of carbon. They're at the most densest place they can be. Now, when these higher crystalline silicate frequencies come into our planet, come into our bodies, they're a completely different type of energy. It's going to plug in our DNA. And this is what the awakening means. Our DNA starts to get plugged back in again where we can access more information. How else can you explain why now? Why now, at this point in our history, 2023, during an ascension cycle, do we see the massive scale of control and manipulation and genocide like most of us don't even remember ever happening in a lifetime? We see the desperation of trying to control humans and put foreign artificial pieces of tech in our bodies to be able to control us. This is on a massive scale and it's becoming more and more obvious. This is because the Great Awakening is our consciousness starting to expand. And as our frequencies in our bodies, because of these frequencies coming in from our galactic core, raise our frequency and plug in some of our DNA, like has been unplugged because they call it junk DNA. This is where we can access more memories. We can access more information and we just know things and we start to share it. That's the awakening. Now, I know there's indigos and starseeds on this planet, ascended masters. Some of them are just doing walk-ins at this point. Some of them have been here a while. But even indigos were hypnotized when we got in here. They did control some of us to a certain point because we didn't know any better. But because indigos and starseed children do have up to 48 strands of DNA available to them, they will wake up quicker and they will access more information that most 12-strand DNA humans just don't have access to. Doesn't mean they're any better than any of them. They've just got more information for them. This is the ones that are out there right now trying to wake up everybody. These are the ones that are sharing information that inside their hearts, inside their minds and their bodies, they've known since they were children. They knew there was something wrong with the system. They always had a problem with the system. They were always put down for being who they were. This is a great piece of evidence to show if you question if you're an indigo, if any of these were your experiences, then you are. So as I've always shared with you, our DNA and our consciousness is the highest currency on this planet. Hopefully most of you are starting to put that together, that to protect ourselves, to be able to take in these higher frequencies, our bodies have to be ready to receive them. So this is our responsibility to protect our own DNA, to raise our own consciousness by learning how to do these things. And these aren't going to be told to you in mainstream media because they will never want any of us to know how to raise our frequencies. They don't want you to understand how to protect your DNA or that your DNA has anything to do with you. This is why they called it junk. This is why they make it sound like we're just inferior beings. We're created from, apes. They want us to believe that we're so inferior to them, that we're just an accident, just a surprise that came together in the world, and that we have to look outside of ourselves for power and for saviors. This is such, and this is what the awakening brings back, all of your power within yourself. So now that you understand, why is everyone waking up? The Great Awakening, why is it happening now? This is why, because the higher frequencies are coming into our planet because the stargates are opening. This is why no other time that all of you can remember, why didn't anyone wake up then? Why wasn't this information being shared then? Because their DNA wasn't activated. Their DNA was still dormant. So they just kept existing. Now is when we've been waking up now for over 10 to 15 years. Some of us have been awake since the get-go. But for a massive scale of a global awakening that's happening right now, this is what the Looking Glass Project predicted every single time it output the answer. And this is why they shut it down. And not only did Bill say that they shut it down, they didn't want anybody knowing what the outcome was, because then this would set them at a risky place. These off-planet races would have what's called vulnerability, where people would realize they're not in control. I've shared before, when you go to a point to make another race so inferior, you try to tamper with their DNA so they don't remember who they are. You lie and you take out what's in the good books and put in what you want them to know, to keep them in fear and control them. That to me is screaming that we as human beings are the most powerful, and they're not. And they never want you to wake up and understand this truth. Because at the end of the day, this great awakening, this sets all of you free. The ones that listen and the ones that resonate and wake up. Because when you no longer believe that you are under this control of this race, of your so-called government, who are not real humans anymore. They've been infiltrated to go along with this one world order. Now you won't go abide by it so much. You're starting to change, and your frequency in your body is changing to higher levels of consciousness. So just to go a little deeper here, when he says that we've been given a slop trough of lies of what they want to happen, what they want to happen in this timeline, this is how they manipulate the timelines and manipulate us. So the slough trough of lies would be everything that we've been given since we opened our eyes on the planet. The school system, the parents teach us the system. I've talked to you about that. The mainstream narrative, everything in our books that we learn in education, everything that we learn from watching TV or movies, everything that is given to us through our five senses in some way pushes this one slough trough of lies, as he says, narrative into our beingness, into our consciousness. And he shares, if we buy into it and believe it, it becomes real. This is so exciting because then you all realize that you all create your own reality, and it's based on our perception of what we're viewing and what we believe. Most of us have always heard that whatever we believe will come true. If you believe it, it'll happen. All of us have heard that, but we don't understand it at a fundamental level because no one taught us how this matrix works. No one really understands the laws, the universal laws, law of attraction, cause and effect. They don't understand that what you are emitting out via your signal, your DNA is emanating a signal. This is what you create as your reality, as an outcome in your timeline. They know this, so they've fed us a one-way narrative. They've edited our books for us to believe their story. And guess what? Everyone's looking around going, look at everything's starting to come true about what's in those books. Well, of course it is, because they understand how to create it. We're creating it because we believed the story and we're making the story happen. Are you guys getting this? The power that resides within all of you? That all of you, no matter where you are right now, you can change your whole entire reality. And when you've heard me say unplug from the mainstream narrative, maybe this will give you more context and understanding. Mainstream narrative is basically feeding you like a tube of what to manifest as a collective reality and your reality as an individual. So most humans, they take everything and they believe it. Because why wouldn't we? Because we're organic, we're loving, unconditional beings. So why would we think that anyone's lying to us? Because we don't naturally think that way. So when we've got all these top figures in our life, we've got a Bible and all these other good books that are telling us a story and all playing their parts, what we don't understand is all of this has been manipulated for hundreds and thousands of years so that this outcome would be here in 2030. I've always said to you, look at how do you get? If there is 8 billion people on this planet, how do you get 8 billion people to basically output the exact same narrative? Do you guys understand the power that's going on here and what they knew and we didn't? You get a collective group of humans. You hijack their perception with stories and lies and keep them in fear. You project into them through mainstream narrative and every single thing that comes in through your five senses, everything you're exposed to soon as you open your eyes. Your parents are teaching you the system without understanding this. This educational system is all your life. That is giving you Like you're in jail. You're in jail and you're in the system and you're in the educational system. You come home, now your parents are giving you the system. You hang out and you go to movies, you're watching the system. Your friends are all part of the system because they're being fed the same mainstream narrative. Do you see how perfectly this has been put in place to output one agenda? Now, how does the awakening affect their agenda? Think about it. It's just like the movie The Matrix when Neo took the red pill and they unplugged him from the machine. It's a little bit different, obviously, with us, but it's same concept. The red pill is the awakening. It's the higher frequencies that are coming into this planet, and the ones that are open and ready to receive it, their consciousness is igniting. It's expanding. You're accessing more information. This is how you just know. You don't need proof. You know, because it's in your cellular memory in your DNA. And this is what is going to stop their agenda, their one world order. The timeline from the Looking Glass constantly put this out anyways. No matter what these off-planet races did, they couldn't prevent this. Because once you unplug from the mainstream narrative, your perception changes, your beliefs start to change, which means you're going to output a different frequency. Picture all the humans all plugged into machines. The awakening happens and we all unplug from the machine. You can call a machine the 3D fence. It's all fear. It's the mind control. It's all of that. But you unplug humans. You don't have to have 8 million or 8 billion humans to unplug either. You just need a certain amount of humans, like I think 500,000, and it will tip the scales of our consciousness. Where you unplug from this machine, they're going to feel the effect because they've been feeding off our low energy. They've been using this machine to create our thoughts, to control our minds, and to keep us looking at one narrative. You unplug from that, no longer can you control that human. Does this make sense now why they want a chip in your head and why they're trying to get nanoparticles and all those artificial technology in your bodies? Because when they can hook you up with the 5G towers and the satellites, you will not have any more choice. They will have you. They will control you. But right now, we're not part of that, so we can get out of the system. So just to give you a little more proof though, Bill goes on to say that when you believe a narrative, it becomes a reality. He says if you create a catastrophe, if you say there's going to be a catastrophe, there will be. Do you guys understand the power of assumption? This has been in many books forever. What you assume, you receive. It's the placebo effect, guys, and we all know it works, but people don't understand it because no one's taught us how the laws work and how we work as energetic magnetic beings who emanate a frequency. That frequency is what you call in to manifest what you are experiencing as your 3D hologram. They know how to manipulate the hologram to their one order, to their one timeline. And they've known how to do this forever. And that's why they mind swept our brain where we couldn't remember anything anymore. The Great Awakening is bringing those memories back. They don't want you to know this because they don't want you to ruin their agenda. So whatever we believe we can create, if they keep telling us, what do they constantly tell us through mainstream? Just look at the news. Constantly negative narrative, CNN. Look at any of them. They have got all of those announcers, all of those people on the news stations, all saying the same narrative. This has been proven. If you go look at what they all say the same thing on every single station. You know, like it's so obvious. It is like the Truman Show. But you got to realize that when you unplug and you start to create your own beliefs by listening to your intuition, by putting new ideas in your imagination where they tell you never to go, where they gave you trouble as children to get the hell out of your imagination, don't daydream. Well, that's a whole story in itself. But why do you think they did that as children? Punish us from daydreaming. Because this is where we create new. They don't want you to create new, and they never did as a child. They wanted you to create their narrative, which means stay out of your imagination and look at one thing. And wherever our attention goes, where our attention goes is what we create more of. It expands our consciousness. It makes it more of for us to experience. So this is why in a mainstream narrative, without being in our imagination to create anything new, we are looking at the exact same thing day in and day out. Energy flows where our attention is. We will grow and expand and keep creating what they want, which is their narrative. This is why any human being, whoever came in and asked, let's look over here instead. That's not true what you're being fed. Look over here. They were called conspiracy theorists. They were told that they are crazy, and everyone laughed at them. because they didn't fit in with the mainstream narrative, because they knew it wasn't the truth. They knew it was hijacking every human's perception and keeping them in a 3D fence. It's like Plato's cave. They're all in the cave looking at their shadows and they think it's reality, and it's really not. Okay, so let's go deeper, guys. Let's talk about epigenetics. So when you think about the mainstream narrative, like I said, and how they've got us all looking in one direction, their story, their fear-based narrative, everyone's looking that way. As soon as you look anywhere else, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're crazy, and you're put down, and people think that there's something wrong with you. So this was part of the program, so that maybe the ones that get told they're crazy, they'll start to conform, because you know what? They can't handle the pressure, because they don't believe or understand who they are as infinite beings. So they conform to the masses, so they don't have to take the heat. But there are some that were willing to take the heat and stand up, and that's all of you guys. So where's all of our attention? It's on the 3D world, right? It's out there in 3D. We're using all 5 of our senses to continue to communicate with the 3D world. Our attention's there. The energy that moves to and through us is going out there. And guess what? Where our attention goes is what we expand, what we grow as our reality, what we keep co-creating with our creator. No one really understands that. But when you're hijacked, your perception is only looking at one narrative. That same narrative is all that a collective hive mind of people can create. When you look at our world, you look at our reality, everyone's creating pretty well the same thing. Everywhere. That's not a coincidence. They understand the mind, they understand the laws, they understand epigenetics, and they know that wherever we're placing our attention, we're going to create more of it. And that's why the awakening scares the hell out of them, because we start to take our attention off all their lies and start to put it in here where all the truth is. Now let's go science. Our DNA, epigenetics above genes. You are not, and it's been shared by Dr. Bruce Lipton, that it's like less than 2% is responsible for any dis-ease in our bodies. It's not our genes. It's not hereditary per se. 2% of it is. Here's the placebo. Here's that form of narrative that's a lie. How many of us were told that if our great-grandmother had it, our grandmother, their grandmother, our mother, it's guaranteed we're going to get it? Remember, whatever you believe, you will have. This was not done by accident. So every single person who comes up with any type of story that your grandmother, your great-grandmother, now your mother, you're next, you accept. So when it shows up, you're not surprised. And then that just kind of nails the coffin, right? Where you're like, see, I told you, that's just how it is in my family. That's not how it is. And epigenetics has proven that. So the environment is what we're perceiving with our 3D, with our 5 senses through the 3D hologram. So our environment, if you look at it, is pretty toxic, isn't it? It's pretty negative. It's all low vibration. You won't find anything very powerful, uplifting to set a human free, to talk about prosperity and health in the mainstream anything. It's all doom and gloom. That's our environment. So our environment is now communicating, signaling the genes in our body. When you signal your genes, the molecules, the DNA, over and over and over and over and over again in a negative energetic frequency, of course our cells will start to mutate and they will start to pick up the signal that they're being given. They will just go ahead and align with it. Epigenetics, we're signaling our environment is signaling us. That's what I've been sharing forever, is called the loop of doom. So how do you change your health? How do you change wealth, prosperity, abundance, happiness, joy? You take yourself out of the environment that's causing all the negative influence. And that has basically been bombarding us since we opened up our eyes on this planet. This is where I constantly say, when you unplug from their lies, their story, which is everywhere. It's everywhere. So you've got to be disciplined enough, and you have to be aware enough to know that none of this is for the greater good of you, your body, your cells, your mind, your soul, your spirit, nothing. Everything in mainstream is to tear your soul, your body apart, to give you so much lies and manipulation that you're operating in such a low frequency that you are easily controlled. Now, all of this makes sense when you just watch what Bill Wood says. They can't control anything but the reactions of people. Well, look at the reactions of everybody. Humans are all reactive beings until you master yourself. Self-mastery is not allowing your outside environment to control how you feel. We have been programmed the opposite way, like everything else. We're very reactive. We're always judging our environment. We're reacting to something that's see-through. It's a hologram. That's what's so incredible when you finally wake up and understand this. We're in a hologram, a three-dimensional hologram, where we're out there reacting to something that's already manifested. You can't change it. You're just reacting to it. Well, how about go back inside into 5D, go into the quantum field and create. Instead of being reactive, you create. And you have self-mastery because you understand the rules of this game. You understand how the laws of the universe work. And you understand that you no longer will be controlled by a narrative that does nothing for the greater good of you, but take from you. And you will see very quickly how higher your frequency and your level of consciousness gets and what information you begin to download. So disclosure's coming. And for the ones that are awake, they already see it. They've seen it for a long time and they're sharing it. And this is what happens with our DNA. It holds cellular memory. So the memories of you, many yous, multiple dimensional yous are there. You have not literally forgotten. Once your DNA strands start to plug in, and you're more than just a 3-strand DNA, 2-strand is what science tries to tell us. Once they start to plug in, you start to access multi-dimensional, interdimensional selves. You start to tap into your intuition. You're a sentient being, for crying out loud. You have more power and more energy coming to and through you that you could ever possibly imagine going out there and trying to get. You don't get anything. You already have it. You just need to release it and let it flow through you. So there's the difference. Everything's in reverse. So this is what we all are remembering and what we're all knowing once our DNA starts to plug in. So I still get every day the same question. Kimberly, how do I raise my frequency? How do I protect my DNA? So first, every one of you is all getting help. Whether you understand this or not, every single human being on this planet who is human is going to have their DNA in some way, shape, or form activate, upgrade, and plug in, depending on who you are. The higher frequencies, the silicate crystalline frequencies that are coming into our planet from our galactic core through our sun, they are still making it in here, even though they're going through all the trouble to block it out. So this is where you're starting to see things that maybe you couldn't see before. You're questioning things you didn't really question before. There's something you're noticing that's not right. It's a little off. This is what's happening. But it's our job to notice these things and to unplug any of the distortions that are in our body that would hinder this higher frequency that's trying to plug our DNA back in. So you're noticing that nothing is as it seems. And over the next year, next 2 years, what's going to be exposed and what's going to be seen is going to be very difficult for a lot of people to comprehend because of the limited beliefs that we've been given in our life. But the ones that raise their consciousness and raise their frequency and have their DNA activation and plugging it back in, this awareness is normal. So when you start to see what you would probably consider what you see in sci-fi movies, you're going to start to see things that your beliefs are going to be like, they can't comprehend. But yet your DNA carries memory and it will know that this is not foreign, it's actually normal, and that you've lived these lives before and this type of technology is quite available. Where we are right now, you might as well look at it as if it's the Stone Age. That's how limited they've kept us. So to put this into context before I go, I'm going to leave the full interview, the link below in this video for you to go watch if you're interested, is that where we place our attention, what our perception is what creates our reality. So they've given us a one story, a one narrative our whole life, and we keep creating it. So they say in the Looking Glass Project that there's an inevitable event that takes place that changes everything. And it's not the end of the world for us. It's the end of their world, the reptilians, the Anunnaki. It's their world. This is why they're so desperate. But we're going to be moving into a new Earth, which means new Earth is on dimension 4, 5, and 6, not 1, 2, and 3, which means all of us have to be responsible for upgrading our own level of consciousness so that we can ascend into new Earth. We cannot ascend when we're living under the frequency fence. I've shared that. So I'm going to ask every one of you, where do you place your attention? One of the ones that I find is the worst place is TikTok. Because TikTok has unbelievable amount of information there about so many negative things. You know, the 15-minute cities and what they're doing in our foods. Where is our attention? Now, this isn't done on accident. This is done on purpose. Of course, the mainstream media, the news, the radio, billboards, what we see on our commercials, what we're constantly seeing in movies recently, like Netflix, my God. They're putting all of this in front of the five senses. They're pushing this narrative at every angle that we create it for them. Do you understand that? They want us to keep creating this narrative for them. Even though the Looking Glass Project has shown that they still can't interfere with the outcome. It still doesn't work for them. The timeline works for us. The moment you guys unplug from the mainstream media, you unplug your five senses from everything in the 3D hologram that isn't positive, abundant, loving, and joyful, you will start to automatically raise in frequency in your own body. Your DNA will start to activate because you're held down because of the narrative. We're stuck in the 3D fence, under the fence, only because of our perception. It's based on our beliefs. It's based on what we've been told and what we're constantly looking at. When we stop the habitual way of being, which can be tough for people, and stop looking out in the 3D hologram and start creating something new that you want, this is when you unplug. And in that moment, your DNA starts to activate and you start to raise in consciousness. But you have to stay there. And you'll be given more information as you expand your level of consciousness. We have to expand our level of consciousness in order to reach different levels of our multidimensionality. I'm not going to go into this today. Our videos are very long, but I want to share one last thing. Just because you know that we win, that we have that timeline, that's the New Earth timeline. There is something that I've shared that's called the Phantom Matrix. It's the black hole. This is where I said they split. So the way that we are able to move into New Earth is because of our consciousness, our frequency, our DNA. It's all to do with that. That's why it's the highest currency on the planet. When they're able to control our level of consciousness without the awakening interfering is when they get the artificial technology in our bodies. This is where they can control what we think, we can control how we feel, which will keep us extremely low in frequency. Why they're doing that is because if they're going to fall, they want to bring as many humans as they can. They don't want you to move into New Earth. We're going to keep them alive in the Phantom Matrix. And that's what they're looking for, at least for a little while.